Most people look at a bank account balance of absolute zero as a life sentence. They treat a lack of capital like a wall built specifically to stop them from building a business, securing freedom, or leaving a mark on the world. When you sit there with empty pockets, watching everyone else run past you with inherited advantages, seed money, and safety nets, it feels like the game was rigged before you even rolled the dice. You hear the advice online, you need money to make money. You hear it from comfortable people, from traditional mindsets, and from people who gave up the moment things got uncomfortable. That single line is one of the most toxic, pervasive lies in modern business. The truth is the exact opposite. Starting from absolute zero does not put you at a disadvantage. Starting with nothing gives you the single greatest psychological, operational, and strategic advantage you will ever possess in the market. When you have $0, you are forced to develop something that capital can never buy: absolute resourcefulness, unshakable discipline, and an undeniable hunger to execute. Money masks incompetence. When a funded startup makes a mistake, they throw cash at it. They run expensive ad campaigns that fail. They hire bloated teams to do simple tasks, and they build complex products nobody asked for. Cash acts as a soft cushion that hides bad strategy and lazy execution. When you have $0, you don't have a cushion. You don't have the luxury of hiding behind a marketing budget. Every single action you take must be sharp, calculated, and direct. You are forced to innovate because you cannot afford to delegate. You are forced to master the sales process because if you don't close, you don't eat. Look at history. Look at the real world. The greatest commercial empires were rarely built by people who started with everything. They were built by people who were backed so far into a corner that forward was the only direction left out. Take Howard Schultz. He grew up in the Bayview housing projects in Brooklyn, New York. His father was a truck driver who broke his ankle working without health insurance, leaving the family with nothing. Schultz didn't have access to capital markets, angel investors, or familial networks. What he had was the cold reality of his environment. When he came across a small coffee bean store in Seattle called Starbucks, he didn't buy it with millions. He built the vision, pitched hundreds of investors, suffered over 200 rejections, and clawed his way into building a global culture around a single cup of coffee. The fuel wasn't money. The fuel was the psychological refusal to return to zero. Look at Jen Cohn, the founder of WhatsApp. He immigrated to the United States from Ukraine, lived on food stamps, and swept floors at a grocery store just to help his mother pay the bills. When he was building WhatsApp, he didn't have offices in Silicon Valley or millions in seed funding. He worked out of cold, leased spaces, writing code on a second-hand laptop. Because he had no money to spend on marketing, WhatsApp had to be built differently. It had to be so reliable, so fast, and so simple that users would tell their friends purely because it worked. Zero capital forced an uncompromising focus on pure product quality. When Facebook bought WhatsApp years later for $19 billion, Combs signed the paperwork at the door of the welfare office where he used to stand in line for food stamps. That is the psychology of $0. When you have money, you rely on money. When you have no money, you rely on yourself. When you start with nothing, your risk tolerance shifts in a way that comfortable people can never understand. A person with $1 million in the bank operates from a place of defense. They are terrified of losing what they have. They make safe moves, timid investments, and slow decisions because they are playing not to lose. When you are at $0, you are playing to win. You cannot fall off the floor. The floor is your baseline. That absence of fear gives you speed. It gives you the audacity to reach out to high-level clients, to make cold calls that others are too proud to make, and to work hours that comfortable competitors find insane. This advantage shows up in three distinct psychological phases when you build from nothing. First is the death of vanity. When you have capital, it is easy to fall in love with the vanity of business. You worry about legal structures, custom branding, high-end laptops, and slick office spaces before you've made a single dollar. But when you operate under the psychology of $0, vanity dies immediately. You don't care about looking like a CEO. You care about generating cash flow. You skip the fluff and go straight to the core mechanics of commerce, solving a real problem for a real human who is willing to hand you their hard-earned money. Second is the mastery of friction. Money removes friction, but friction is where skill is built. If you hire agency to run your ads day one, you never learn the psychology of copy. If you hire a sales rep day one, you never learn how to overcome a customer's objection. When you do everything yourself out of necessity, you acquire an operational blueprint of your entire business. Years later, when you do hire people, nobody can fool you, nobody can outwork you, and nobody can tell you something is impossible because you built every brick with your own hands. Third is the asset of hunger. Capital can buy intelligence, software, and distribution, but it can never buy hunger. A funded competitor working 9 to 5 will always lose to a desperate founder working 16 hours a day who views victory as their only ticket to freedom. Hunger eats capital for breakfast. So if you are watching this right now, sitting in a small room, staring at a bank balance that makes your chest feel tight, understand where you actually are. You are not at the end. You are at the starting line of the ultimate competitive advantage. Stop waiting for funding. Stop waiting for the perfect partner. Stop waiting for your savings to hit a comfortable number before you launch your service, build your software, or make that first offer. The market does not care about your initial balance. It cares about your value, your execution, and your persistence. Every dollar you don't have is an incentive to become sharper. Every resource you lack is an invitation to become more resourceful. When you start at zero, every single step forward is pure profit. Every skill you pick up is permanent. Every client you close is proof that you don't need a head start to win the race. Use the clarity of having nothing to lose. Embrace the friction, execute with ruthless discipline, and build an empire that could only be forged in the fire of starting from nothing.